Don't even think about it. Look, Monokuma, I think I am seeing a beehive in the distance. Will you stop it? You did that joke over 50 times by now. And I only need one more for it to be the 53rd. God, I'm not paid enough for this. Well, hey, you are a bear in a forest. Act like one. Bite me! If I am to think of students that are hard to dislike, ones that you definitely cannot find big reasons to hate them for, both on a personal and writing level, one of them would definitely have to be Rantaro, don't you think? Judging by how the fandom perceives him, you will definitely fall in one of the following categories. Either you like him, or feel pretty neutral about him. Or there is also the third category, which is fangirls who really love him for how handsome he is. With that being said, Rantaro sure does seem to be a bit of a mixed bag between the categories that I mentioned. Between being one of the most voted in terms of popularity in Japan, placing him on 6th place, him being placed among the lowest in some of my own polls, and ones that I have seen on Reddit in which he's either loved or people voted that they felt neutral about him. As you can see, not much hate for him there either. If you were to ask me what camp am I in, I would definitely have to say that I reside in the neutral one when it comes to Rantaro, as of now. You rarely see me talk about him or even mention his name these days, in comparison to some of my favorites, or ones that have made much bigger impact on me than him. Even to this day, I still gonna have to say that in terms of first victims of each main entry, he is my favorite one because despite me not having such a huge personal connection with him or he doesn't have that much screen time, he still raised quite a bit of intrigue when it comes to who he truly is and his importance in the main story that he has more points in my book than say Sayaka or the Ultimate Imposter. Granted, after a while, I did forget about him for most of the killing game till we went to his lab. Actually, I do have to correct myself there. The killing game actually does give us bits and pieces here and there to remind us of Rantaro, like the edited version of his video from the Survivor perk, and the lab, which we have found earlier but couldn't enter because he died. Thus, it makes the player more intrigued in terms of wanting to know more about Rantaro, but just cannot reach their truth yet. So, if I am to mention my first quote-unquote problem with Rantaro, it is his lack of screen time in the killing game, which still works really great in the writing department, but still makes him a bit forgettable in my eyes because I don't have that personal connection made with him that I would with the other students. A reason why I gravitate towards the others more than him, especially the survivors. And no, even if I were to find him the hottest guy ever, that wouldn't change my feelings towards him. And, well, it isn't just screen time here, folks, because despite the lack of screen time in comparison to students who survive longer, Kaede is one that has such a huge presence, and the whole chapter was entirely made with her in mind, not only because she was the first protagonist and we have been with her, but also because of the dramatic moments that have happened, that have made a huge impact on the fandom. Like the protagonist switch, her murder plan to stop the mastermind, a really big chunk of moments between her and Shuichi during chapter 1, and because of how well liked she is. So, in conclusion, even if someone has less screen time than others, what matters is the level of impact they have made on the fandom and the students themselves. If you are to think about it, while Rantaro has a significant importance when it comes to his participation in the killing games, Kaede doesn't have that level of story relevance, but she compensates with the emotional bond she has made with the students, especially Shuichi, and the fandom. And, well, of course, screen time is always going to be a huge problem that the writers have to combat for the first students that died, since they have to do their very best to write them and have them impact the fandom. And in my eyes, I think they have succeeded really well this time. Not just with Kaede, but with Rantaro as well, since it is a step up to what we had before in terms of Chapter 1 devs. Actually, come to think of it, aren't you forgetting someone? Mukuro Ikusaba. Wasn't she one of the first victims too? Oh yeah, right. You know, I actually forgot that Mukuro herself died in the first chapter of the first Killing Game too. When I went through it, I cannot say that I cared much about this Mukuro person, but once I read Danganronpa F, my liking for her has increased exponentially. So if I am to think about it again, I guess you could say that Mukuro is my favorite first victim? I mean, she technically isn't the first victim. I mean, Sayaka died first, so... Well, okay. One thing that I have to say is that if the Danganronpa novel didn't exist, then I wouldn't have given two shits about Mukuro. Whereas here, we get a lot out of Kaede and Rantaro just from the Killing Game alone. If we are to take out the novel, then Rantaro is still my favorite first victim in the series. One thing that I have to mention that, in comparison to the other students, he definitely shows that he may know a lot more about what is going on, kinda like how the player already knows. Also, if we are to think about it, doesn't Rantaro remind you of a particular someone from the past Killing Games? Someone who doesn't even know what their talent is, one who tries to go after the mastermind without anybody else knowing, all by himself because of his lack of trust in his classmates. He's very serious and chill, very logical. I'm gonna give you 5 seconds to guess. Yep, you guessed it, it's Kyoko. Though, in comparison to Kyoko, who has solved her problem of trust by the end of the first Killing Game, and Shuichi, who had Kaede to help him, Rantaro's lack of trust has ended in his failure. He couldn't trust anyone. He was scared because of not knowing what was going on, why he had the survivor perk, or who he even was to begin with. Which can make us sympathize with him when we find out about all of this during the first and the last trial of V3. About his personality, I do have to say that while he is very chill and seems very friendly and a nice guy to spend time with, he's not very social from what I have noticed, especially in his free time events after ending the Killing Game. We do notice that he is restraining himself from wanting Shuichi to learn more about him at times. He's not as social as, say, Kaede. He's not weird, he's not a jerk, he surely likes to spend time with the students, but doesn't want to get too close at times. With that being said, he definitely feels like the most un-Danganronpa-like person in the sense that he's not cartoonish-like, he's not a comedy relief type character, he doesn't have wild reactions, he's serious and logical, but not to the extreme like Kyoko. He feels like the most grounded person you see in Danganronpa with no quirks whatsoever. Because even if you are to think of other down-to-earth type students like, say, Mahiru, she still has that Danganronpa type quirk of being super strict with guys. Like, almost every student you know has that one thing to them that will make them easily recognizable in the giant pool of students. For example, catchphrases. Himiko has her nye, Ryoma has his famous "you still got a ways to go." Angie mentions Atua quite a lot, Tenko has degenerate male, etc. Rantaro is among the few who doesn't have anything like that to make him recognizable, so to speak. So, yep, a fairly grounded man. By the way, here's a fun little thing that can be found about Rantaro. If you look at this shirt, you'll notice a particular design. Doesn't it make you think that it may have something to do with his actual talent? It does look like a ship wheel in my eyes. Actually, yeah, I'm also thinking about this too. I do have to say that in terms of making the design for Rantaro himself, he must have been one of the more difficult ones to make, since you do also have to conceal his talent, and it was meant to be a secret from the beginning. Think back on Kyoko, who, while her talent was unknown for most of the Kidding game, you can definitely think of her as a detective based on the way she thinks, talks, and also her clothing. With some of the students in V3, the clothing that the students chose are tied to their talents, like Himiko's mage outfit, Angie with her painting tools on her, Kokichi who looks like a patient from a mental hospital if you are to take away his scarf, Mew and her... But Rantaro, you probably wouldn't have guessed that easily if he was an ultimate traveler or adventurer. Alright, one last part that we should discuss. His free time events. What do you think? They were fun. His free time events are basically a journey towards finding Rantaro's ultimate talent, in which we also learn that he's a very caring brother. We do learn some stuff about the way he is, so I'd say that his free time events are neat for the most part. I say for the most part cause here's the second problem people might have with when it comes to Rantaro, which is his last free time event when he mentions he has 12 sisters instead of just one. I did see some people say that this final event completely destroyed all of his free time events, which I think it is an exaggeration, but I can see where they are coming from. Him losing his sister during his trip, making him feel guilt, I find to be one of the more interesting parts about Rantaro, outside of his mysterious aura throughout the Killing game and his importance to the Killing game. Also, it was nice hearing Rantaro talk about his passion for traveling and his insights. So, up until this point, all of this stuff about Rantaro, it is interesting. It tells us that he's a very serious student. It can create a bigger attachment towards him and also make us want to root for him to find his sister. And then boom! He's telling us right at the end that he lost 12 sisters instead of just one. Like, boom! Bam! Takui! Shabam!
Kazing!
It is such a drastic change in what they were going for by adding such a redonkulous twist for the sake of comedy. Especially if we're talking about Rantaro, because this sort of thing you might expect from the more comedic over-the-top students like Tenko or Mew, but not from someone who, again, is so down-to-earth, so serious like Rantaro. Also, I checked the discussion that both Shuichi and Rantaro had in their free time events, but Rantaro has only said sister, and he talked so much about it as if he only had one sister. Never did he give us a hint that this whole thing wasn't the first time he lost a sister. So not only does it feel absurd, but also inconsistent. I mean, how would a guy like him ever lose 12 sisters? I don't fucking know. Maybe it's a plot from one of the episodes from the Loud House cartoon. Maybe Kodaka was watching that cartoon at some point and decided, might as well just throw in that plot for Rantaro. Might as well. I mean, I don't know. I have read some stuff about this, and some people did bring up the point about the balance between having a serious moment while also adding comedy on top, and how Danganronpa has problems finding said balance. Like, for example, Mikan whenever she trips in sexual ways, which can show us her desperate need for attention, but they do these scenes every single time, only in comedic fashion for us to just laugh, instead of moving further and expanding on her character as an obvious next step. They just never treated Mikan seriously, and it just... I'm going off topic here a bit. The point is, this can be a similar case. But I have been thinking about it very hard, and only came up with one idea that may counteract this problem with the whole 12 sisters thing. Maybe it was just a joke. And I'm not talking about how they wrote the endings to his free time events as a joke. I mean that maybe Rantaro himself was making a joke. I mean, it can be possible. Him mentioning that he has 12 sisters was one of the last things he said before ending his free time events. So it can be that he followed up with a "I was just kidding" off screen. Also, him joking about it to begin with would actually be a sign of Rantaro feeling much more comfortable with Shuichi, knowing that he is very supportive of his sister dilemma, whereas before he was very distant talking about it, So yeah, it can be that Rantaro made that joke because he was feeling much more comfortable with Shuichi, so... Wouldn't it mean that if you want this to be the case, you'll have to see his ending assignment team to see if he was joking? Yeah, I thought about that too, and well, for the sake of this, I decided that I'm gonna go and watch the ending like right now, and see what the deal is with this. Well, that didn't help. He definitely seemed serious about it, even in the last months of Southern team, so... You know, there is something that I noticed while you were discussing about Rantaro. And I believe I noticed this before too, but... Is it just me, or are you feeling a tiny bit jealous of Rantaro's attractiveness? Why do people always ask me that? It's obvious that I'm not. Because I do also find myself to be attractive too, FYI, so I don't have any reason to feel jealous. Nobody can resist my bones. Also, if I were to feel jealous of someone being attractive, it wouldn't be Rantaro in my eyes, really, but rather Shuichi or Kaito. And I guess I'm not the only one thinking that, judging by this Reddit post I found. Who are the most / least attractive boys / girls in each of the games? Where most people tend to pick either Shuichi or Kaito as the most attractive. Sadly though, it does seem that people tend to pick Ryoma as the ugliest guy out of all the V3 guys. And it pains me to see Himiko be thrown out there as the ugliest girl in the cast. You fucking assholes. Well, I think that is pretty much it about Rantaro. Not much else I can talk about in all honesty, so I guess it is time for me to rank him. And to be honest, even if I said at the beginning that I myself reside in a neutral camp when it comes to him, I do like how they handled him. And he didn't have as many flaws in the writing department as other students from the V3 cast, who I would definitely feel neutral about. Even if I didn't have that much of a personal connection made with him in comparison to other students who I love, he compensates with how important he was to the plot of V3 when it comes to his participation in the killing game. And there have been some moments when I did feel sympathetic towards him, like how he trusted nobody, with that leading to his death, and how he lost his sisters. So I'm gonna give him a like heart. Congratulations, Rantaro. Court is adjourned. And with that being said, I hope you guys liked this discussion / analysis video, and well, I'm still gonna have to work on how to do these kinds of character analysis things, cause not all of them are gonna go like this. Some will be done in different ways, given that there can be a lot of stuff to talk about in some cases. You wanna hear me talk about some of my favorites? Oh boy, those are gonna be wild. So I may end up going really fast with those ones, but here I was able to go at the usual pace, like before, given that it was Rantaro. So next time I think I will end up analyzing a particular mate. And oh boy, I can already imagine that there will be a lot of stuff to say there. So till then. Himiko? Himiko, are you still crying? Please don't be sad.